Everyone, and welcome to the Energy Business Leadership Forum event. Any other big Canadian hockey fans in the room? One more, just that's it, one more? Wasn't that a great finish yesterday to a great Olympic event? Anyways, welcome. It's my privilege and my pleasure to kick off this very important event for all of us. Many of you heard Charles Phillips last year speak about the role of information technology and the importance of information technology in being able to deliver on smart grid solutions. More importantly, he talked about how IT can help with implementing low-cost smart grid solutions. As part of our continued commitment as a company to your industry, I was asked last year to step into the leadership role in running the utilities business around the world for Oracle. But more importantly, Larry and Charles asked me to lead Oracle's smart grid initiative, which brings together all the assets of Oracle, most namely Sun, as many of you know. A few weeks ago we finalized that. So our hardware solutions, our database solutions, our middleware solutions, and of course our industry applications, bringing them together into a comprehensive portfolio to deliver on smart grid. I've been as part of Oracle and predecessor companies now for over 12 years with PeopleSoft and Oracle. And I've had the privilege and the luxury of being part of 3 other industry transformations. I started off in the banking industry, moved over into the public sector industry, and then most recently drove huge transformations around the world for our telecommunications industry. And we've all seen what those transformations have been like. And it was a privilege and a pleasure for me to be involved with not only taking out billions of dollars of cost out of companies' infrastructure, but really helping transform how these organizations dealt with us as citizens, whether you're in public sector, or us as clients, whether you're in banking or whether you're in telecommunications. And so when Larry and Charles asked me, I jumped at this opportunity because this is such a transformative time in our industry, and I believed I could bring the lessons learned to this industry and help drive the transformation that we're all undertaking. And there is one common ingredient, one common element that drove success in the previous industries. Whether you're in banking, telco, or government, one common ingredient was that they built the future of their business on one solid IT business platform. One solid IT business platform that took the hundreds of business processes. And when you think of the history of 30 to 40 years, hundreds of business processes have been put together into these information silos, and it's about undoing that and simplifying that and rebuilding those business processes into an enterprise architecture that gives you the real-time visibility into the performance of your business. That's what this is about for us. That's what this is about for me. That's the lesson learned that I'm bringing forward, and smart grid is no different. If you look at smart grid and some of the opportunities that are in front of us, I won't use the word challenges, the opportunities that are in front of us, when you look at the necessity of having a backbone of information technology to allow you to deal with the avalanche of data is going to be absolutely crucial. I mean, we all know the story of moving from once a month to once an hour is a 730-fold increase of data as we deploy these meters. That's only half the story. As most utilities and many other organizations have multiple sources of customer data. So that 700-fold increase, if we don't have a single source of the truth of a customer, that could be 2, 3, 4, 5x, because that 730-fold increase is per client. And so having a solid IT business backbone is going to be absolutely crucial in making sure that we get one single source of the truth of a client, so that we don't face thousands and thousands of multiples of increase in information across our business. Customers, our consumers, of course, are demanding more from us in terms of visibility and transparency. They would like to get online information about conservation, about programs that they can get more information on. And by the way, they want to enroll in these programs in real time. So obviously that brings with it a significant amount of challenges as well, or opportunities as well. And finally, legislative changes. We always talk a lot about the impending legislative changes that are coming, and I had dinner with a CEO a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about the anxiety of having to respond in this jurisdiction to meter outages within 72 hours. I mean, the connecting of the dots that is required from a meter to field deployment is pretty significant in making sure that not only can we respond to the legislative requirements, but also make sure that we don't have thousands of unnecessary truck rolls a year in terms of cost effectiveness and efficiency of our staff and the costs of delivering business. So smart grid, I think in my mind, is there's a lot of hype around it, of course, but there's a lot of truth to what's in front of us right now today. And I know many of you are getting asked every single day, whether it's your regulators, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a board member, whether it's the constituents that you serve. I'm sure you're being asked every day, are we smart? Are we smart? Are we smart? And the answer is, of course, we're all smart. I mean, there's 200 registrants in here, and the challenge is we have 200 versions of what smart is today. And it's up to us to band together and continue to work through ways of finding commonality in definitions and standards around smart grid. And in the meantime, I would really continue to enforce the opportunity in front of us, which is to build that foundation, build that integrated business platform, so no matter what this industry throws at you, so no matter what legislators and government throw at us as an industry, you have the nimbleness and the flexibility to deal with it in real time. And I think that's the continued focus of myself. That's the focus of thousands of employees that we're going to continue to drive and focus on your industry, and that's the commitment that I'm making to this industry and Oracle is making to this industry. So where are we today? Where have we come from? Where are we going? I'd like Lynda Jackman to come on up. She's my group vice president in our utilities business and has some really good background on where we're going in the future. So, Lynda, and thank you very much. Appreciate the time. I look forward to seeing you all a little bit later. No hockey jokes.
Stephan just said no hockey jokes. To start with an equal opportunity, I'd like to congratulate Ireland on beating England in the Six Nations rugby tournament on the weekend. So I can do any sport. Thanks very much, Marty, for the welcome. This event is very important to us to continue that debate at a different level. We go all the time to industry events where the debate is very much around what we're doing today. But Marty's leadership shows that this whole discussion around emerging architecture is the most critical thing, whether that architecture is engineering or whether that architecture is technology. These are the things that are really important to us. And as Stephan and Marty both said, the time to act, we believe, is now. It's a time of revolution in the industry. It's not really, it is an evolution, but there's a lot of dramatic changes that are coming about. But what problem are we trying to solve? And I think no matter how we define smart grid, there's a couple of issues that I think we're trying to solve. The first one is lessening the demand during critical peak, which is going to avoid the building of extra generation, meeting the renewable targets that are being imposed from outside the industry, and therefore limiting those carbon emissions. And as the industry knows it's done for years, it needs to continue to maintain reliability, maintain safety, and maintain affordable energy, which, as Gary said in his welcoming comments last night, is really the economic driver around most economies. That doesn't seem so hard, does it? Well, clearly it's not. Clearly it is, actually. We've recently completed a survey of about 150 utility executives, together with hundreds of customers. When we survey at Oracle, we don't only survey utility executives, we also survey the constituents that use the energy, that pay for the energy. And we'll be releasing a survey in the next couple of weeks, giving you a little bit more grounding in what this is all about. But we thought we'd give you a preview today as to what utility executives are thinking. You'll have to wait for the study, but let's take a look at it. I think the thing that surprises me most about this survey is, if you read it from the bottom up, 78% of utilities are not doing smart grid deployments. They may be thinking about it, they may be waiting to see, they may be taking a chance to do some pilots. But the stat that's really interesting is that's the majority of utilities. Only 22% believe they're leading the change. Now, with every industry, we know there's always leaders and followers, but with the amount of discussion that's in the media and in the press today, we were actually staggered by how many people are not looking at enterprise-wide deployments. Interesting enough, the stats that are in this report tally very closely to a recent survey that was done by Green Tech Media. It's exactly the same. They came up with about 23-24% of utilities actively looking at smart grid deployment. So, as we think that smart grid is the next evolution in the industry, a lot of what we do today is not new. A lot of this technology has been around, and as the conference title says, this is about developing that emerging architecture. So the question we pose as players in the industry is, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for standards? I don't know how many of you in the room here are involved in Open Smart Grid, in NIST, and a lot of the standard bodies, whether it's IEC. But those standards are emerging, but they're still a long way off. Most of the head-end vendors that operate in the market today maybe deliver some integration via multi-speak, but that's about as far as it goes. So if utilities are waiting for a standard, they're going to be waiting a little while longer. Are they waiting for funding? No matter where we are in the world, here in the US, we're very fortunate. We've had a very generous grant from the government, as it has across the world. The Australian government, the European Union has done exactly the same to tackle some of these smart grid problems. So utilities are not waiting for funding. Or are we waiting for the pilots to complete? Is that what we're waiting for? But at present moment, 78% of those utilities are still sitting waiting. But what we do know, and the thing that we do know, is that the utilities are challenged by a couple of things. They're challenged by turning centralised generation into distributed generation. They're challenged by turning an analogue system into a digital system. And they're challenged by turning a relationship with their customers from passive to active. They're the big three constituents that we see in this debate. And what we see from that is utilities must approach this problem with the vendors as an enterprise problem. It is not to be conducted in the traditional enterprise silos that we see. So let's have a look at a couple of those other survey results. We see here that what keeps executives up at night is, as we would all expect, consumers' reactions to rate increases. So is it time to look at different funding models? Is it time to look at some change? You will have the opportunity. Marty and the team at EnergyBiz has brought together some of the true leaders in the industry. So is it time for us as an audience to challenge them about the traditional funding models? Is this the way things are going to go forward, and is it going to bring about change? Obviously, the cost to comply with environmental mandates, whether it's clean coal or whether it's just the integration of renewables onto the grid. There is a huge cost associated with that, and who pays for that? The guys at number one, the consumers. And there is obviously this whole model around rate recovery. Is there something we can do differently? Again, we look at this and we are challenged by this definition of smart grid. Utility executives expect the wide-scale adoption of smart meters. But I think all of us in this room, the 200 and so delegates that are in this room, would question whether smart meters are actually about smart grid. They're a part of it, but they're not the whole story. And as we've seen recently, if we don't engage the other sectors within the industry and the other sectors within the organisation, we're not actually going to have a solution. So let's look at it from a different lens. This is very much a macro view, but let's look at it at the micro level. Sometimes we plan top down, sometimes we plan bottom up. But let's look at just what we're asking utilities to do. And this is what the call to action from our perspective is very much around what that is all about. The call to action is around enterprise architecture and that emerging architecture that Marty spoke about at the start. If we take just a single data element, we're reading 15-minute interval data. What are we going to do that with that across the enterprise? All of the utilities in the room immediately grasp at one thing: time of use pricing, critical peak, those sorts of things. But that single data element is used across the organisation. And this is why this is an evolutionary change to the utility industry. They have to break down, and we are all part of that dialogue. We have to break down those silos and start looking at this data across the enterprise. We all know billings and collections. An interval data element at a micro level will provide data to bill complex and interval rates. We are seeing trials and pilots. We've just completed our first real-time pricing pilot out in the West. It aids in the detection of energy theft and, interesting enough, in water theft as well. We're seeing an emergence of the water industry into this smart distribution space. It provides data for net billing customers for generation, injected into the grid, and it enables prepaid metering. This we all know. You all know this. Everybody's gone, she's not telling us anything new. But let's look at that piece of interval data and let's look at the operations side. So at present moment, we're still with customer service. We're still in the heart of the utility, the cash register of the utility. But let's look at it from an operational perspective. Where is that data now going to be used? That massive amount, that 700-fold increase that Stephan spoke about, where is that data going to be used across the operations? It's going to be used to optimise asset utilisation through load aggregation. It's going to aid the determination of potential outages. It's going to improve leak detection. It's going to determine whether the infrastructure is going to be upgraded or replaced because it knows and understands the usage that's gone through that particular asset. It provides data to determine where distribution generation capability would increase reliability. Very much macro and micro things. So that tiny piece of data that we're looking at from those smart meters impacts how broadly that utility will continue to operate. Network managers will be able to analyse power flows. Distribution planners will be able to size transformers. Engineers will be able to rectify bottlenecks and other inefficiencies on their network. So the benefits will increase throughput and reduce grid overbuilding. So there's that operations side of the view. So fine, two parts to the story. Let's look at the emerging customer service. This thing I spoke about earlier, this change in the relationship utilities have with their customer, which moves from passive to active. It'll provide detailed usage to customers, online, real-time. There's a utility out west that actually forecasts what your bill will be, and if it moves outside the profile midway through the month, they will send you a notification. They're not doing that out of the generosity of their heart. They're doing that because they want you to manage your budget. It'll provide information to help customers answer queries about their usage. And so that general push of information out to the customer is a key part of this smart grid debate. And you must, as we urge all utilities and everybody involved in this discussion, to start engaging with their customers. It is the only way we will stop rate increases being the number one thing that utilities executives worry about. Let's look at the next area, marketing. It'll enable new programs for energy efficiency, things like electric vehicles. We haven't seen, or we don't believe today we've seen, the transformation of energy pricing policies from the utilities that came about in the communications industry that Stephan mentioned. We have a utility in New Zealand who actually offers all-you-can-use electricity free to their residential customers on the weekends, so they're able to increase their rates during the week because they've got a base load, they're generating it anyway. And so they feel that those sorts of plans are the things that become most important. The thing that mobilises that, however, is interval data. It will provide proof of compliance and non-compliance of conservation programs, something that's near and dear to everybody's heart. But let's look at that single piece of interval data yet again. Let's look at generation planning. It provides data for that future build that everybody wants to avoid, but we all know if we're going to deal with critical peak is almost inevitable. It provides data in aid of rate recovery and all of that data that needs to be collected in order to file those rate cases. And it helps supply managers shave supply costs because instead of relying on bucketed profiles, it will actually bring forward real profiles for customers and real usage. Because smart meters enable that more proficient, exact procurement and of delivery of energy. It will also help supply costs go down. And the last one, obviously, regulatory support. Massive amounts of data are collected every year for the development of rate cases. So looking at that from just that single piece of interval data, this is not a debate for the guys in the meter shop. So this is not a debate for the people that just sit and look at meter data as their sole entity. This is a challenge that utilities are facing across. We could have easily used another couple of examples. We could have used sensor data. We could have used a lot of things. But this is the change that utilities are undertaking. And so it's not only within their utility, it is also external. This change from centralised generation to distributed generation. This change from analogue meters to digital meters, and this change from passive customer relationships to active customer relationships. This is what we say are the things that we need to do now. You as utility professionals need to work together with the key players in the industry. A lot of the technology that is required exists today. And we urge the utilities to move beyond that 22% adoption of a smart meter rollout. And where that technology is not available, we're innovating with partner utilities, building microgrid controllers and all sorts of things that are coming down the line with electric vehicles. So we see that smart grid is the next incremental improvement for a system that today is reliable. And the approach we urge utilities to look at this from an enterprise-wide view, not only internally, but also externally. Thank you.